Hello and welcome to another sound design tutorial with Sky River Sound. My name is James Thatcher and today I'm going to be talking about some more advanced ways of making laser sounds using Softtube Modular. What I've done is I have taken part of the trailer for a game called Colonies End, which is set up to go on early access on Steam, and I took a scene with a laser battle here. And then I've used that as inspiration for this laser sound. I went frame by frame and marked each frame where the laser was firing and put a MIDI note there. I'm using those MIDI notes just to trigger when the laser should fire. I'm not using the pitch information at all. In Modular, I'm not going to build this patch through. I'm just going to kind of explain what I've got going on and show you how you could set it up. So lots of blinking lights, that's how you know you're having fun with Modular. What I've done is I started with this Intellijel Rubicon oscillator. And what makes Rubicon really cool is not only does it give us a lot of different waveform outputs, it also has something that is really difficult to achieve in the analog world, which is it can do through zero frequency modulation. Now we're using, obviously, the digital emulation here in Softtube, but it's based off of a real-world Eurorack module. And I'm not going to go into all the details of what through zero frequency modulation means. If you're a nerd like I am and you want to look that up, go for it. It is pretty interesting. It involves a bit of math, so it can be a little scary. But basically what it means is as something, usually another oscillator, is modulating the frequency of this oscillator, it allows that frequency to go through the value of zero, which can really hurt your head when you think about frequency being something that happens less often than zero. But for people who are much better at math than I am, they can make sense of it and make it work. So we're making use of this through zero frequency modulation here. And we're using linear, which is even harder to accomplish. I'm not sure how they did this in the analog world. Hats off to Intellijel for this. We're using the linear through zero frequency modulation mode. And we are modulating it using the simple sine oscillator set to 827 Hertz. I just tuned it by ear. I also tuned the coarse and fine tuning here by ear. And the way you set that up is you just go out from your oscillator that you want to modulate the frequency of Rubicon into this TZFM switch. You can't really see it there, but it's just below my mouse. And then leave the switch set to linear, or lin. And then what you do is you need to move this index knob up and down. So I can show you what happens as I change the index knob up and down. Let's turn this down so that it's no longer modulating the index, and we'll hear what happens as we modulate the frequency of the Rubicon oscillator. So there's where it is not being modulated. If I turn the index down, big difference. Now when I turn the modulation amount back up, this little knob controls how much this envelope coming from the 4MS pingable envelope generator will modulate the index, meaning how much through zero frequency modulation is taking place. So here we are with the final sound. Okay, so we've set up our Rubicon. We've got it modulated by this sine oscillator. The way that it's being modulated, or what's controlling the amount, is the blue envelope here on our pingable envelope generator. It's controlling the index, and what it's doing is, because I've got this scale knob set to the negative, that means that it's taking the envelope that it's generating here, and it is turning this index knob for me backwards each time the laser fires. The way we get it to do that is we use the trigger from our MIDI to CV, set it to the async input here for the envelope generator, and then I've just got this second sine oscillator going into the ping signals so that the pingable envelope generator has some idea of how fast these envelopes should be. And then you can control the speed of the envelopes even further using the ping division multiplier knobs. So what else is going on in this patch? We're modulating the symmetry of the output. And the symmetry knob can really mess things up with this oscillator. It's a lot of fun. What we've got it doing is I'm taking the OR signal from the pingable envelope generator, which I believe measures the values of both the red and blue envelopes, and it outputs whichever value is higher. So it's outputting this to modulate the symmetry, which is basically turning this symmetry knob for us. So we can hear it again as it's in action. Okay, now how do we have this routed as far as the audio is concerned? We've got the sine oscillator set to sigmoid mode going into this VCA, the first VCA. We've got the sub-oscillator, which is playing a signal an octave below, but still using the through-zero frequency modulation. And it is outputting to the second VCA. Both of the VCAs then go into this audio mixer, which is then sent into saturation knob, a beautiful, beautiful distortion module that then outputs to the main output here. And that's really what's going on with this. So if we summarize it, sigmoid and sub-oscillator go into the voltage-controlled amplifiers, which are both being controlled by the red envelope, into audio mixer, into saturation knob, main output. Modulation that's going on. We've got the red envelope modulating the exponential frequency modulation, which would be your more typical pitch modulation that you would find on most any oscillator. The red envelope is also modulating the two voltage-controlled amplifiers. The blue envelope is modulating the through-zero frequency modulation, the index meaning how much modulation is occurring. It's basically taking this knob and turning it back and forth each time a MIDI note is received. We've got this sine oscillator here, just sending a simple sine wave into the through-zero frequency modulation input. It's set to linear mode, and that is essentially all that's going on here. Let me know if you have any questions about this patch, or how to put it together, or if you'd like to see me build it piece by piece. I doubt I'd get it exactly the same sound, but I could get you close again. What I've then done for the sound is to make it sound a little more natural. I added some convolution reverb to give it a little more natural and less synthesizer sound. I'm using a convolution reverb, in this case IR1 by Waves. Let's hear it without the reverb. Hear how harsh that is? I did that intentionally, knowing that the convolution reverb would smooth that out a bit. But in IR1, I've modified the preset for desert quite a bit. This desert preset that they've got is great for anything that's taking place on another planet in space or in a desert type setting. Really nice preset. I've changed it quite a bit. I've changed the size, I've changed the time, the density, the resonance, the decorrelation. I've added some dampening and some EQ to it as well. And I've changed the dry and wet. And that brings us to the laser that we have now. You hear how the reverb really smoothed that out and put it into a space that seems more real to our ears. What I can do from here is I might add some layers using samples. I'm going to see if that gives us what we want. I kind of want something going on as kind of a hissing sound toward the tail of each laser. So I'm going to look into adding that, and I'll be back with you. Okay, and I'm back. I've added another layer here. What I did was I just took a simple recording that I made of a blowtorch, and I cut it up, faded it out so that it happens every time the laser fires. And then I have pitched it down using Reaper's built-in pitch adjuster. I also adjusted the formants a little bit to help it sound more full and emphasize the lower frequencies. This isn't going to be something that's a really obvious sound, but it's something that you miss when it's gone. Here it is with the blowtorch. And here it is if I mute the blowtorch. We're getting into where some subtle differences can really help make a sound more convincing. I've got one more thing that I want to try with this. I'm going to see if I can't take an impact sound and make it go boing with some distortion. I'll be back after I've tried that. Okay, and I'm back. I've added another layer. This time I took a recording of a staple gun, and here it is without any effects. And I've probably confused at least half of you watching by now. Don't worry, I am crazy, but that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing here. Let's go in, turn our effects on, and look at what we've got. So first thing I've done is I've pitched it down using Sound Shifter, and that leaves us with this. We're a little closer to where we want to be. Where the exciting part really comes in is when we add Berzerk distortion, a new distortion that Waves put out a couple months ago. I've got it set to loony mode. The drive is up quite high. And when you turn the feedback type to sine and blend all the way up, add some level, you can then adjust where you want the feedback generator to blend in between and the speed at which it will go between those 2 points. I had to carefully adjust the dynamic section to keep it from feeding back too long. And with that, we end up with this sound. So maybe I'm not quite so loony after all. You can hear where it's sounding like something useful as a layer in a laser gun sound. The final thing that I did was I added in just some EQ with a really steep high-pass filter here to get rid of that extra low end that builds up at the end. So with everything together in context and balanced in with the other sounds, we end up with this. And there you have it. There's a more advanced way of doing a laser gun, blending in both the use of modular from Softtube. You could do the same if you've got those modules in your Eurorack. And then using some samples to supplement what we already got with the modular layer. I hope that you've enjoyed this and had as much fun watching as I've had making it. Please feel free to leave in the comments any topics about sound design that you'd like to see in future tutorials. I'm really curious to hear what you think. Thank you once again for watching. I hope to see you next week.